Hag Sameach Teruah. Happy Feast of Noise. Happy Feast of Trumpets. Happy New Year-ish. The Feast of Teruah is literally a feast of noise, but has picked up a couple other names over the centuries. The Feast of Trumpets, and is known in modern times as the Jewish New Year's, even though it takes place in the 7th month of the Jewish year. But anyway, as I teach the significance of this ancient biblical feast, I will periodically say the words trumpet. Those are the only two words, trumpet and shofar. These words, trumpet or shofar, you may blow your noisemaker. Please blow them quickly and stop so that I can keep the message moving for your help in this endeavor. So if you don't have a noisemaker, because I forgot to, just make some noise. All right. Please stand and cover yourselves with a reading of our scriptures tonight. They're a little extensive. Our first verse comes from Vayikra, which is known also as Leviticus, chapter 23, verse 24. It says, Daber el b'nei Yisrael lemor be'echad lachodesh chem Shabbaton Zikron Mikra Kodesh. The next one is from, also known as Exodus, chapter 19. We'll look at verses 18 and 19, which say, Vehar Sinai Ashan Pene Asher Yarad Alaiv Yahweh Ba'esh Vaya'al Ashano HaKiveshan Vayecherad Kol Hahar Ne'od Kol HaShofar Lech Ve Me'od Moshe Er Veha Elohim Ya'anenu Vekol Yeshayahu or Isaiah or chapter 40 rather, verses 3 and 4, which say Kol Midbar Panu Derech Yashru Ba'arava Mesila, rather, Lelohenu. Then it's verse 4, Kol Gay, the whole, Har, A, Yish, Palu, the Haya, Le, Mishor, Hasim, the Levi. We have another one from Shemot or Exodus 24, and this is verses 6 through 8. Vayikach Moshe Chadam Vayasem Ba'aganot Vahatzi Arak Al Hamitzvach Ach Sefer HaBerit Vayikra Be'aznei Ha'am Vayom Ru Kol Asher Diber Va'asher Venishma Vayikach Moshe et Hadam Vayizroch al Ha'adam Ha'am rather Vayomer Ha'verit Ha'asher Yahweh Im Machem al Kol Ha'devarim Ha'eleh. And hopefully I read that slow enough that everybody could pick up on some of the words. Anyway, Vayikra or Leviticus 20 through 24. Our first word is Daber. You guys know what that is. It's speak. It's setting in a row, ranging in order, to lead, to guide, especially to lead flocks or herds to pasture, to rule, to direct the people, to lead, to rule, also to bring into order, to subdue. It's much used, of course, and in the verb, the most frequent meaning is to speak properly, to put words in order. of connecting and saying. So this is not just say what's off the top of your head where every other word is right? Because you can always tell someone's just when they start saying every other word. This isn't like that. These are words that have been put in order, they've been arranged, they've worked them, they've moved them so that it comes out exact. Then it says El B'nai, which is to the children. Ra'el, to the children of Israel. Then it's Mur, which is to say. The primary signification is to bear force, hence to bring to light, which is basically to shed light on the subject. That you're going to put in order. You're going to speak them to the children of Israel, and then you're going to bring something to light with those words. And here's what you're going to bring to light. Bachodesh, doesn't that sound a lot like Kodesh? Not the same word. Chodesh, in the new moon. That's every time the moon is a new moon. It's a lunar month. Then it says Ha-Shvi'i, the seventh. So in the seventh new moon, so it's the seventh month. Be'echad. It's not in one, it's in first. It's one. The echad is, of course, used for one, but in this case, it's first. In days. And since we know that it's in the seventh month, you're counting days, right? So we know the word changes to first as opposed to one. Ahad, which is to unite. And he feel, because it's not used in call, to unite. The root idea here is to unite, to join oneself together, to collect. So what are we collecting? We're collecting days and months. First. Anyway, so then we got La Chodesh, to the new moon. Yiyeh, it will be lachem, to you, Shabbaton. Ever heard Shabbat before? Sabbath, right? So this is in plural. In the seventh month, you will have a whole bunch of Sabbaths. Kind of feels like that, right? Because yesterday was a Sabbath, tomorrow we're starting now it's a Sabbath, but that's not what they're talking about. This means it goes on forever. This makes it eternal. It won't be just one time that you do this and never do it again. Because it's in plural, it means you will do it every year. This idea is to rest, to keep a day of rest. The primary idea is that of to sit down, to sit still. It is used of men not laboring, of land which is not tilled, of travelers abstaining from a journey, sitting at the gate. I did not make this up. I got it right out of the Thucydides. Says to desist to leave off properly, to desist from doing anything, to celebrate. What? We celebrate by doing nothing. I'm just saying. Then it says zichron. It's a memorial. This is something you remember. It's a remembrance. So a memento. I think that's supposed to be memento. A celebration of any particular day. Being very particular, it's the tech. And of course, that's the word that comes up next. And that does not mean trumpet, it means noise. And it's of a tumult, of oh, it's going on outside. I'm hearing crashing and banging and clanging, right? That's a tumult. There's especially joyful noise, rejoicing, joyful acclamations with which the people receive the king. A warlike cry. You know what they mean by that? Ah, la, 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 la. The sound of a trumpet, of course. Sacrifices. Oh, someone caught it. Sacrifices offered with the sound of trumpets. It's from the root. Does it sound familiar? To make a loud noise. So the reason why they connect it with trumpets is because they make a loud noise. The next word is, which is not the word trumpet. A mikra is a convocation. It's a calling together. It's an assembly. a sacred convocation, a place of holy convocation, recitation and reading things and reading. Right? We've already been doing all that. And then it's Kodesh, it's holy. What does it mean when it's holy? It's something that's consecrated to God. It is holy. The tabernacle was holy. The temple was holy. It's from the root that means to be pure, clean, properly used of physical purity and cleanliness. So if you came tonight, you didn't first. I'm just saying. Anyway, these are things that's in for holy worship, but that's not really what they're talking about. When they say it's holy, it means it's set aside. It's something that we do every time the time comes up, like Shabbat is set aside. It's that day is set aside for us to rest. And this particular day on the 7th month, we're supposed to set aside a celebration, a memorial celebration of Vayikra, Leviticus 23:24. Speak to the children of Israel. Say in the new moon of the 7th month, there will be to you Shabbaton, celebrations, holy assemblies. Why is this a memorial celebration and not the celebration of a future event? Take a look at Shemot, or Exodus 19, 18, and 19. This is my translation of the Hebrew text. Sinai was completely covered with smoke. Okay? Descended upon it in Esh. It's a word that mimics the sound of fire. There's a grammar rule here. When you use the word Esh of a human being or of God in human terms, we're not trying to bring God down to human terms. We're trying to make humans a way to somewhat understand God. That's what we mean. But when the word Esh, fire that burns logs to a passion. So God descended on that mountain in his soul. And then it goes on, and the smoke ascended as the smoke of a smelting furnace. So this was a very hot, like a pyroclastic volcano. This was one fiery passion from God. And the whole mountain trembled greatly. God reached down, he grabbed a hold of some clay, and wow, how the earth must have trembled. But when God stepped down with all that passion in his soul, things trembled. Verse 19, the sound of the shofar, those are the trumpets. You're supposed to stop real quick. You missed the trumpet word. Was continuous. The sound of the was continuous and then Moshe spoke, and God answered him with a voice. In other words, God spoke their language, which was Hebrew, by the way. Noisy, passion-filled event. A memorial celebration and not the celebration of future events? Well, because Yahweh came to Sinai, made his covenant with Israel. He didn't come to betroth. Yahweh came with the shofar. Really, he came with the shofarim. It came with the shofar. That's the key word there. That the first time, which means he came to consummate. He didn't come to pop the question straight into marriage. But because the children of Israel refused to hear God's voice, the Hebrew marriage now takes place in two phases. The first phase is called Arusin, which is betrothal, and Nisuin, which is consummation. That happened because of the events at Sinai. Today, we celebrate the second phase. We celebrate consummation. Before we talk about the return of the groom and consummation, let's talk about the Arusa and the best man. The Arusa, let's say it this way, once the bride accepted the marriage proposal, Arusin began the time of the Arusa. This was known as the time of sanctification, or the time of the. It was a time for the bride to prepare her body, her heart and mind before entering into the second phase of the marriage covenant. Drank the cup of Arusa, legally married. She put on a veil and began her set part bride. They did not kiss, they did not shake hands, they didn't even hug. Under her husband's authority, even though she did not live with him. The bride stayed in her father's house, and the groom went home to his father's house. The groom left provision for her, acquired possession, responsibility. The Arusa was the time of preparation. It was the time for her to study the Ketuvah. What Ketuvah is with God, she needed to know exactly what was expected of her, and she needed to know what she could and should expect from her groom. Well, that's why we learn the Torah. That's why we learn the law. So we know what we can and should expect from our groom. Now, Arusa is a time close her heart, her body, her mind. That's what we always have to keep that in mind. That's what this is for. Now, Rabbi Yosef ben Yeshua, Christians called Jesus, he was actually a rabbi, and his teacher was named Yosef, not his father. The rabbi that taught him. So his Rabbi Yosef ben Yeshua was his title. Then shall the Malchut Hashamayim heaven be like 10 virgins, which took their nerot and went out to meet their bridegroom. Foolish, and 5 of them were wise. For the foolish took their nerot, that's the oil lamp, by the way, but did not take oil with them. So, there was some oil in them. They didn't have any extra when it ran out. They took oil in their containers with their nerot. While the bridegroom delayed his coming, they were all idle and slept. That's an idiom. That's not literal. Their life accordingly. They worked on the Arusa. And in the middle of the night, there was a shout. Behold, the bridegroom comes. Go out and meet him. I left the word out. Verse 7. Then all the virgins arose and trimmed their nerot, their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, give us your oil, for our nerot are running out. Muhammad saying, no, lest there not be enough for us. Go rather to those who sell and purchase for yourselves. They were gone to buy. The bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him into the wedding feast. And later came the rest of the virgins, saying, Lord, open to us. But somehow they found their way there. I'm just saying. But he answered and said, Amen. I say to you, I not know you. Then he said, watch therefore, for you do not know the day. So why are some brides left behind? Why didn't the groom just wait around for the others to get some oil? He has waited all this time. He's waited this long. What are a few extra minutes going to change? Well, in this mashal, this is a parable. They entered into a covenant with the groom. The generation of the 5 unwise shows the value they placed on their groom. The fact that they did not prepare proves that they did not enter into the Arusa, live a set-apart life. It does not matter how clean they are on the outside, mind has not changed completely and forever. Those who enter into the Arusa are looking for a fire insurance policy. They are not looking for the minimum requirement for entry. To the Arusa, their heart is truly changed. With their whole heart, they confess with their mouth. They prepare. They live a set-apart life about it. They actually do it. Let's talk about the best man. Now in Yeshayahu, that's Isaiah, chapter 40, verses 3 and 4, my translation again of the Hebrew. A voice crying in the wilderness, return to the Torah. What it says. Well, the path of Yahweh is the Torah. Return to the Torah is what he's saying. To the path. Then it says, be the path directly to God. Yes, it does. This is an idiom. The idiom is make straight in the day of our God. So tell me, how do you make a highway for God? What's he going to drive on it? Make a highway straight in the desert, or make straight in the desert a highway for our God. It's a Hebrew idiom. It means beat a path directly to God. In English, every valley exalted, and every mountain and hill made low, and every crooked place to be straight, and every rough place to be level. Remove everything that comes between you and God. Every valley, you bring it up. Every mountain, you bring it down. Every crooked place, you straighten it out. You smooth it off and make it level, make it smooth, right? Getting rid of everything that comes between you and God. That's all that means. Obviously, God had someone who would go before him and prepare the way for his return. It's all about. So because of this, the best man goes before the groom to prepare the way for his return. In the wedding celebration is what we should be able to connect to the coming of our groom for us, right? Once the time came to enter into Nisoin, remember that's the consummation. The best man and his entourage would go ahead of the groom about 3/4 of a mile. The groom came with shouts of joy, the voice of the best man, and a shofar. The event and would wake up everyone in the village. The groom sometimes lived far enough away that he would arrive at the village in the middle of the night. The groom was called a thief in the night. As you can imagine, always the girl was never taken in the middle of the night without the knowledge and or consent of her parents, right? Like that with the idea of a thief. It's an idiom, as a thief in the night. He came in the middle of the night is really all it means. No one knew the day or the hour the groom would return. There was no way for them to know. If he returned at night, the bride would need oil for her lamp to make the journey. Now let's from the Sepharim Shelihim. That's the New Testament. It's in First Yeshashav, or otherwise known as First Thessalonians, chapter 4, verse 16. It says, for the Lord himself, and they're using the word Kyrios in Greek for Lord. When you look that up, it's Christo is used for Messiah or anointed in the entire Septuagint. Kurios and Kyrie is used in place of the name. It is never used to mean Lord. It's saying for God himself, for Yahweh himself. The word despota in Greek is used for Lord as in master in the Septuagint. 15:11 and in Daniel 9:8, they use despota in place of the word Yahweh. These are obvious mistakes on the part of the Greek translators. This word should have been. Then it says with or in this shout. What shout? Ruah. The tumult, the loud noise, the blowing of the trumpets, the joyful acclamation. Then it's with a voice, the phone in Greek, through the voice, whether of animals or of men, both speaking and crying out, joy and in sorrow, or also of God either speaking or thundering, whence to thunder, right? So it's the voice. But Arhagalau, Arhagalau, is an archangel. Whatever. We would use the word Rosh because it's the head, the leader, we're the highest, the most supreme. Malach, messenger, not angel. This is not Catholicism. Someone sent by God. In Malachi chapter 2, verse 7, they say, for the priest's lips should keep knowledge, and they should seek at his mouth, for he is the messenger of Yahweh of hosts. The priest of Yahweh of hosts. It's in your Bible. I didn't make that up. With a salpigi. A salpigi. I just realized S-A-L-P-I-G-I. A salpigi. That's a Greek word for trumpet. We would say shofar. Right? It's the noise maker. It's the trumpet. Then it says it, of who? Theou in Greek. That's Elohim. That's God. Kata besitai, which is shall descend. Yared, or in English, Jared. Jared. It's to go down, to descend. Not only in going down from the mountain, but generally whoever goes from a loftier place or region to one less elevated, especially those who go to a spring or a river, is elevated above the surface of the water. It's to go down. This is Haranah, or in Greek, or Shamayim. It's going to go down from the heavens. That loud noise is going to come down from the heavens. And it says the Nechroi, to die, death. It is used of death, whether of men or beasts, to perish, to be destroyed, dying about to die. In it says, Christou. You know what happened? Somebody went in there and started capitalizing the K. His name, right? What it means is anointed. An anointed priest. I should tell you why. Because in the very, very, very olden days, they had shields made out of leather. Shot arrows with fire on them. If that leather was dry, that leather would catch right on fire. And if they doused that oil, it wouldn't burn. You think that'd be very counterintuitive, but it didn't burn. So that's what they're talking about. But it's a prince. Why? Because when the prince enters into office, or a high priest or a king like that, they're anointed. They take the oil and pour it on the top of their head and let it flow all the way to the ground if it's the priest. About anointing of kings and things like that is from the root that is to stroke, to draw the hand over anything, with anything, especially to lay colors on anything, because like painting, you're spreading paint over it, by doing which the leather becomes more tenacious to weapons. That's putting the oil on it, on the shield, especially to anoint anyone as a sacred rite in his inauguration into an office as a priest or a prophet or a king. Anointed who have died. Then it says Anase Sontai. Kuma Adonai. Oh, sorry. Got lost there. Is from the seat or from the bed to stand up. So anointed who have died will stand up, will rise up. Rishon, they'll rise up first. Translation. I think you guys have probably caught it. First, Yashashah, 1 Thessalonians 4:16. Himself will come down from the heavens with a loud, passionate noise of rejoicing. best man, that's the prince of the messengers, Farim of God, and the dead to the Arusa, the people who were anointed. Those are the people who entered into Arusa up first. They have their narot, they have their lamps full, and they have a container to refill their narot. Didn't the others make it to the door knock? While they will not enter into the secret place, which is the wedding chamber, Master's house. Here are the words that the best man shouts from Levi or Matthew chapter 25, verse 6. Hine ba'ze'ena likrato. Behold the bridegroom and meet him. The bride was not stolen in the night without the knowledge of everyone around her. Know what day or time of the day he would return. He would return. This phase began for the groom to go get his bride. It was fully entered into when the marriage was consummated in the intimate place. To this phase under a chuppah, which represented the cloud at Sinai, was a large white prayer shawl. This usually took place in the bride's backyard. The bride shared a cup of wine as a token of covenant, passing of the cup, because it's essentially what they just. The idea of passing of the cup, Shemot or Exodus 24, 6 through 8. It says, and Moshe took half of the blood, put in a big old tub. Blood he sprinkled on the altar. And he took the scroll of the covenant and read it in the audience of the people. And they said, all that Yahweh has said, we will. And Moshe took the blood and sprinkled it on the people. Took it out of the big bowl and sprinkled it on the people. And he said, behold, the blood of the covenant which Yahweh has made in all these words. Let's talk about a blood covenant just for a minute. In a blood covenant, entered into covenant with God, there's a good example of a blood covenant. So he goes out and he chops up some sheep, and he chops up some birds, and there's all kinds of stuff. Why did he do that? Was God really hungry? I'm just kidding. No, he had a big family to feed. And so that's how you decide how much is supposed to be sacrificed, because what you're having is a barbecue. The covenant, of course, in this case, it was God, because he's the one that came to Abraham and said, let's enter into a covenant. So, stronger partner, not because he was stronger. It's obvious God was stronger, but that's not why he was called. He was called the stronger partner because he initiated the covenant. I mean, under normal circumstances, the initiator, the stronger partner, would pass between the animals. About this, dip his hands in the blood and splash it all over himself. When it was finished, the person who accepted the covenant, who was called the weaker partner, and all that meant was that person was accepting the covenant. It meant nothing about, oh, this one had more power and that one had less power, or more strength or less strength, or a moment. It had nothing to do with any of that. It just identifies who initiated and who accepted. That's all it does. Who accepts it can pass through the same animals, and if that person is excited, that all that blood and splash it all over himself, and they called that being washed. Are you washed in the blood? I'm just asking. Significance of the blood all over him was a way of saying, may the same thing happen to me or those animals if I break this means that the blood covenant is a punishable by death if you break it. That's a pretty serious covenant. In the blood of the Lamb, well, you pass through. Have you passed through? You accept his sacrifice. It was a blood covenant. This is why the penalty for adultery was death and is death. It never has changed. The wedding party would then head to the note where they would consummate. The New Testament called it the mansion. Yeah, use the word mansion. And I'm sure if God builds us an intimate place, they really missed the boat on that one. It's an intimate place. At the note, they would go inside and close the door. And this gets a little weird. He would stand outside the door with his ear to the door. The chuppah on the bed. Remember, that's that white prayer shawl. The veil was removed from the marriage was consummated. And after the consummation, the groom would examine the chuppah. If there was no blood, there was essentially two choices. Or have the woman put to death publicly or privately. That's choice number one. Still loved her, and perhaps it wasn't there because of you. Head, make a little cut on your wrist, put a couple drops on there, because all that has to be there is a couple of drops of blood. Are you prepared for the return of your groom? Him when you see the fire and hear the shofar? Have you prepared your heart, or is it still hard? Have you prepared your mind, or have you been too busy to think about it? Or have you let it dwindle? Do you have extra oil for the journey, or having time to purchase some at the last minute? Are you ready to drink the cup of passion? Have you been learning the terms of your ketubah and anticipating his return? Or do you just look the part? Will this year's celebration be yet another memory of your non-committal? Celebration be the memorial or the memory of the day you entered into God's passion. Because this is what it's about. Will you give into his passion of passion? Shalom, be shalom.